Hey guys, this is part 5 of water pollution. So how does your local municipal sewage treatment plant work? First, there's a huge, you guys did an assignment in class where where you had to separate things based on density. That is actually the first step in cleaning any kind of sewage water. So there's a physical separation that happens. They use nets, they use the density, plastic floats on water, metal sinks to the bottom. So anything that can be physically separated is separated. The next part of it is to actually do, they have these giant filters. So first, physical separation where they actually like take out anything that's a solid waste can be taken out. Then it goes through a filter process. In the filtration, a lot of waste is removed. They also use a ton of um, chlorine. There's sulfuric acid is used, chlorine is used. There's different kinds of chemical agents are used here to remove compounds. At this stage, POPs and VOCs are taken out. POP and VOCs, you kind of need to know that. And the next stage is where, okay, I don't know if you guys got to write that down. So POPs and VOCs are removed in the second stage. And in the third stage is where mostly the nitrates, the phosphates, anything that can cause eutrophication is removed. They also have a system where they filter out all the excess chemicals that they've put into it to kind of balance the pH of the water. In most places, unfortunately, the sewer system is also connected to the storm drain system. So if there's a heavy storm, it tends to overflow, it tends to overload the system, and then so raw sewage starts dumping out. That's never a good thing. And also remember, the places in the United States that tends to get very high rainfall, gets very a lot of storms, a lot of hurricanes, tornadoes are also some of the poorest states in the United States. Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Florida, all these places get a ton of rain. They get hurricanes, they get tornadoes and all that other wonderful stuff. They're also the poorest states, which means the toxic runoff into surface water and into raw sewage being dumped out is greater, because at the end of the day, it's all money. Step 1, a physical removal. So let's go over the municipal sewage system. Step 1 is physically removing stuff. It's a filtration process. Step 2 is a filtration process combined with chemical agents and certain amount of biological agents. Step 3 is entirely removing things that have to do with eutrophication. So when you have at the end of step 3, most of the water is reclamation water. That is what a plant looks like. Is reclamation water. We've talked about this. Reclamation water can be used to water your golf courses, water public parks and stuff like that. There are low cost ways of doing it. One of the lowest cost way of doing this is this one, where you actually you do the second stage, you go up to the second stage and then let the water run through natural aquatic plants, through wetlands, through aquatic plants, through what do you call those mops of bacteria, little cakes of bacteria. They do the so I had to pause in the middle because I was having a mental thought. So the cheapest way of doing this is to actually go through the 3 stages, or even at the second stage, pass it through wetlands that are created for this. You have certain kinds of like duckweed. You can have certain kinds of archaea that are methanogens. You could have certain kinds of archaea that are thermophils, even hydrogen sulfide bacteria that are sulfide based. You could have a purple sulfur bacteria. There are tons of bacteria that actually breaks down waste on a daily basis. There are tons of tons of fungi that does the same thing. So you could have bacterial mats, you can have mycomats, you can have aquatic plants that do it. And the reason it's cheaper is because these things are a self-generating system. The sewage that goes through them, not exactly raw sewage, but the sewage, the cleaned up effluent flow that flows through them, provides food for for fungi, for bacteria, for algae, for the plants, for the animals that live in there. So it is, it's a nice self-fulfilling system, which kind of brings the cost down. Water remediation, we've talked about this in the past. So again, you could use living organisms like duckweed. Besides duckweed, you can use various types of archaea. To do that, you can use various types of fungi. And obviously bacteria. This is a very, very, very interesting method that is being used. This is was formed by a couple in Vermont, and now they are based in Washington. So what it is this huge arc. It's a 55 to 60 feet long ship that's solar powered, and they've been very successful with cleaning up water from rivers and lakes. So it's a 3-stage process. The first stage is the water runs through it, and there is bacterial mats that clean out the water. Then it runs through a second stage where so it's just a series of tanks, and you kind of park it in the middle, and the river or the lake or even the ocean, the water there flows through these different stages. The first one being bacterial, the second one being fungi based, and the third one aquatic plant based. So they flow through these 3 things, and as they flow through them, the water gets cleaned out. And then the 4th stage is where they go back and they replenish the water with whatever life forms it had. It's a very effective method, but it is very, very expensive. And so usually it kind of cycles around. Once the bacteria is removed, the waste from one vessel might become the food for the next. So it just cycles around. It's a very effective. It's not a cost-effective method. It's ecologically a very sound method. So basically, if you had a river that was flowing that way, you would park a ship right there, which would kind of let the water through. The first stage would be bacteria-based. And as it goes through, the bacteria cleans up the water. Then it goes through the fungal stage, and then it goes through I'm just going to put AP, which is aquatic plant stage. So cleans up the water in the process. Now, are they going to get 100% of everything out? No. This stage also has a little filter that's set up here, so any plastic residue can be taken out. So this little filter. And they also, and then replenish they kind of replenish the water with whatever native species was there. So whatever is the bacteria here, the dead bacteria becomes food, which is the waste here, becomes food for the fungal group. The dead fungi becomes food for the aquatic group. So it is a kind of self-sustaining group of cells that are used for the ocean arc, and it is a very expensive process. China has been using it. They have been very successful in actually removing even oil. Oil spills, cleaning up oil spills. They're actually way more successful than Corset that we talked about in the previous slide. But it is a slow process, and it's also much more expensive. So here's the thing, it is more expensive in the short term, but when you use a chemical like corset, while short term it might be really inexpensive compared to the ocean arc, it is long term based on the health the health defects that are caused actually turns out to be way more expensive. So we've talked about the US Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and we've talked about how and why a law is beneficial or isn't beneficial. What are the things you need for a law to actually have some teeth to it? Again, like I was talking in the previous things, there are a ton of unfunded mandates. Sometimes the states are asked to clean things based on the Clean Water Act, but then they're not repaid by Congress, so that becomes a deficit in budget. People are not happy when their budgets are out of whack, so it is not a good condition. Again, we've talked about this part where non-point, please remember this, that urban non-point pollutions as well as agricultural runoff, which would be basically rural non-point pollutions, are actually more difficult to regulate. We've talked about, so some of the places that can be very categorically said a toxic waste site, and you can pinpoint where this contamination is coming from. They come under CERCLA, they become a super fund, government puts in some money, and the private company, it is a private-public partnership, so whatever company did the contamination, they have to pay for the cleanup. But when I talked about contamination and cleanup, I think in solids and solid waste chapters, I talked about the shortcomings of CERCLA. So make sure that when you're writing an essay, you bring in that information. Here are some of the important laws. I'm going to hold this video for a couple of minutes, couple of seconds here so that, or you can pause it. I would suggest that you pause it here because you are going to need to know all of those things. Those things are going to show up on a test. You need to know them. Bye-bye.